It's my honor to declare the 2021 Conservative Party National Convention officially open.
The stakes are high at the start of this virtual convention. Erin O'Toole's first since becoming leader. More than 6 months into the job, this is a political opportunity to share policies and reach voters ahead of the next election.
Do you know who this is? Probably not. He's no celebrity.
But O'Toole is also facing political challenges with reports of internal divisions and no bumps in the polls. So what does O'Toole need to accomplish over the next 3 days or so? It's Thursday. I'm here with that issue. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Raj. Good to see everybody. Can't remember who I started with next week, so I'll just maybe pick a name out of that. Erin O'Toole's keynote, that's happening on Friday. It's his first speech of this kind. I wonder what he has to do we think? Althea, why don't you start us off in terms of who he's speaking to, the substance he needs to deliver?
I think he needs to tell the Canadian public who Erin O'Toole is. He has been defined by the people who are opposed to him in his caucus and outside of his caucus for the last several months. He has not put that much in the window. When he has put things in the window, they have not been greeted by large swaths of the Conservative movement positively. I think of the reach out to union members, for example, the fear that he might move on carbon pricing. And strangely, he is not talking to the members of the Conservative Party. He is talking to the Canadian public at this convention. And he will try, I think, to change the channel, because at the moment, the convention is all about what is not being discussed, and a movement among some in the party who feel that the party has gone to great lengths to not hear from its base by muzzling discussion that would normally occur at a party convention. And it's strange because, more than any other political party, I would say the Conservative Party is actually afraid of its members. And usually they go to great lengths to prevent the public from seeing the discussions that go on at their policy convention. And maybe perhaps because of COVID and the fact that everything is virtual, it's easier for them to do this. But I think the move that the party is trying to do to basically freeze out the social conservatives, who are a significant part of its base, it might actually prove to be troublesome down the road when it comes to fundraising and volunteers and really just the mood in the party.
The fact, though, Chantal, that we are now more than 6 months into his leadership and he still has to explain what he stands for, that seems problematic to me. And we've talked about how it might be because of the pandemic, but how clear does he have to be, and how big an opportunity is this?
Well, if I were asking the questions, and I'm not, I would ask what is the big idea that Erin O'Toole has brought to the Conservative Party over the past 6 months that is not something from Andrew Scheer's era. And the reason why we spend so much time talking about social conservatives and their place in the party possibly is because there's a vacuum here. Now, in an ideal world, Erin O'Toole would have an honest conversation with his members over the course of that speech. And he would also look for a way to explain to the other Canadians who will be watching how he is different from Andrew Scheer. Because, and on one topic in particular that I think many Conservatives agree with, at some point, Erin O'Toole is going to have to tell his party and tell Canadians why he is a more serious leader on climate change. And if he leaves that convention with a cut and pasted position from Andrew Scheer's platform on climate change, he will have lost that convention.
Wow. So what's the likelihood we hear that kind of policy from him, Andrew, do you think?
I think the situation is more serious than that. I don't think his primary goal or purpose with this speech is to reach out to the broader public, as necessary and important as that is. I think he's got much more trouble in the party that he's got to address. He's got a party, I mean, this is going to be a convention that is unusually stage managed, even by the stage managed traditions of Canadian conventions, because it's a virtual convention. That means it's going to have less of a natural audience for the public, because it's all going to be on, a virtual thing rather than the razzmatazz of a usual convention. But it also means that they're going to be able to, as they see it in the party hierarchy, to tamp down the base and keep them from running amok. But the base is going to be not necessarily terribly happy about that. So you've got a base that is already confused, divided, not sure where the party's going, not sure what to make of Erin O'Toole, who after all has now, made manifest about 5 different versions of himself. I think he's got repair work to do with the party first. I mean, yes, he can start to lay out policies, and that will help him with the base. It will tangentially help him, or by extension, help him to reach out to the broader public. But I think he's got repair work with his own party, first of all, before he can start to really reach out to the broader public.
Okay, so an easy job for one speech on a Friday night. Go ahead, Chantal. Yeah.
But in a virtual convention, I don't think that he can do a lot of repair work with the party. And I don't think he can avoid the fact that that speech is probably what most non-conservatives will see of the convention. Yeah. I don't think that most, except we will, but then we're junkies, but most voters will not be sitting on Saturday online to watch that convention. So that speech matters more than the bridge repairing within the party. And I don't disagree with Andrew's assessment that things are not good. But this is not the kind of setup where you can repair bridges without addressing Canadians in general, because an election could be 3 months away.
Andrew, you want to jump in, and then I'll go to Althea. Yep.
Just let me put it this way. If the speech doesn't land well with the general public, that's a real missed opportunity. If it doesn't land well with the party itself, he's in real trouble.
Althea.
I would love to say that it really, really matters, but it doesn't at all. I mean, Andrew Scheer had a great speech in 2018, and then he proceeded to flare out completely during the campaign. And I say this knowing that he actually won more votes than the Liberals who ended up forming the government. But, this is not a precursor, I think, of things to come. But in the short term, it would be good if the speech lands. Yeah.
So let me ask you, does he have time to improve the situation? Because the polls are not good. They are worse than they were under Scheer, and they don't seem to be moving. You would normally get a bump. He doesn't have the bump. So Althea, does he have time to repair things and to get people's attention in case there is an election in just a few months?
This is like a roundabout way of asking me when I think the election campaign
is
going to be.
No, absolutely not. No, I would never do that to you.
I don't know if he has time, because I don't know when the campaign is going to be. I think the problem with Erin O'Toole, and I think we've come to realize this, is it's really hard to define yourself when you haven't already been defined prior to a leadership. And he is struggling to do that. Yeah. And frankly, that is his fault, because he keeps switching in different directions all the time. So I don't know if he has enough time. I think that I don't see why the Liberals can't keep governing until the end of their mandate. They have a willing supporter with the NDP, so perhaps Erin O'Toole has a long runway ahead.
Chantal.
Right. Yes, and possibly they might want to do that so that they don't lose Erin O'Toole as their main adversary. No. Seriously, 3 months before the 2015 election, Justin Trudeau was running in 3rd place. And weeks before the 2006 election, Paul Martin was winning. So the time thing, it's a question of context. That being said, at this point, the message Canadian voters who are not conservatives are getting is that this is a party that has so many issues to settle within itself that it is not a serious contender for power.
Andrew.
The difference between this party and the Stephen Harper Conservatives of 2006 or the Justin Trudeau Liberals of 2015 is that those parties were willing to take chances and to take bold policy declarations. This party gives every appearance of being thoroughly unnerved. That's a part of a broader problem with Conservatives and Conservative parties in Canada and abroad. In the last 10, 20 years, they have really kind of lost their way of sense of what it is they stand for. It's why you see things like the Trump eruption. But it's also post-pandemic, you've got a Liberal government that can afford, so they believe, to be all things to all people. They've been released from the budget constraint. They are handing out money to every constituency and every interest and every individual in the country. At some point, the price for that is going to come due, but unfortunately for the Conservatives, that's probably after the next election.
We are in the process of finalizing an agreement with the United States for the receipt of 1.5 million doses of AstraZeneca. And in terms of the arrangement, what we are contemplating is that we will receive these 1.5 million doses now, and that when we receive our 20 million doses of AstraZeneca in Q2 and Q3, we will then provide 1.5 million back to the United States in a sort of swap transaction.
That was Anita Anand, the Minister of Procurement, speaking on Thursday on Power and Politics about the plans for a vaccine loan, if you will, from the U.S. All plans have to still be finalized, but it does seem like it's close to done. Chantal, Andrew, and Althea back for another round on At Issue on this topic and another. Let me just get your take on this, first of all. Andrew, why don't you start us off on this one? It does sort of speak to the fact that, well, we need stuff and the United States has it, but also that perhaps immunization on a continental approach also makes some sense for all countries.
Yeah, at one point, Canadians were taking a sort of perverse pride that if anybody wanted to keep the border closed, it was us because the Americans were in such terrible shape. Things are starting to turn around in that regard because their vaccination program is going so much more rapidly than ours. This is certainly a good move, a creative move, but it's a measure of how dire the situation is. We are still in 62nd place on that Our World in Data chart that everyone refers to. We keep being told we're going to catch up, we're going to catch up. Maybe we will, but maybe we won't. But I hope we keep our eyes on this, that the measure of this is not whether they meet their own self-assigned targets by the end of March, for example. It's how well are we doing relative to other countries, because that's a measure of how well we could be doing. And right now, it's not looking so good.
Althea.
I think it's a great idea. I wish governments would think creatively like this more often. I don't think we're the border they're most concerned about, though. I think that's probably more Mexico. But the fact that they have these doses that are not actually even approved in the United States yet, why wouldn't they share it, knowing that there is no cost to them to do this, and they win a lot of praise from critics who've accused the U.S. of basically hoarding vaccines.
Does it though in any way, Chantal, put the focus on the government as though we are still having to take sort of handouts from people because we are trying to ramp up as quickly as we can, and it's still sometimes difficult?
I guess it depends on where you live. I live in a province where the Premier is not known to be particularly friendly to Justin Trudeau. But Premier Legault did promise this week, before this happened, by the way, that every Quebecer who wanted first dose would have it by June 24th. Notice that it's not July 1st, Canada Day, but June 24th.
It's Jean-Baptiste Day. He's smart.
It's not an accident. But if Premier Legault is confident enough that the federal government is going to be sending him vaccines, and that goes back before this deal, that he can make this promise, then I'm guessing that, yes, it's a useful gesture because those vaccines are sitting somewhere and they're not being used. But I suspect that at this point, the supplies will be coming in, and it's going to be a drop in the water rather than a huge difference to the vaccine operation in the country.
Okay, I want to turn to another topic, a difficult topic, and that is what's happening in China with the two Canadians detained there, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. One trial starting tonight, as we're probably just after we air some of this, or after we speak. We did speak to Michael Kovrig's wife, Veena Najibullah, and this is what she had to say.
His detention is arbitrary and unjust. And no matter what transpires in court on Monday, that fact does not change. Our government has made that very clear. And I hope this will give extra determination, if we ever needed it, to keep pressing and to urgently bring this to an end.
I should say that Michael Kovrig's trial starts Monday. Michael Spavor's trial starts sort of Friday night, Thursday evening, Monday, Friday morning. I mean, everyone assumed that this was going to get to this point, Andrew. I don't quite know what to say. I don't know how this can be avoided. I don't know how quickly this will unfold and what this means for them.
It's horrifying. I mean, the trials, as far as we understand, are going to be held in secret or behind closed doors. They might well be, by past practice, be done in a day. The sentencing, on the other hand, could happen the next day or the same day, or could happen years later. The courts are completely controlled by the Chinese government. I guess the only thing one can say is the longer this goes on and the closer we get to this, the less we have to lose in taking a harder line with China. I know the government, and I don't fault them for this. I think any government in a similar situation would be torn with how to react. And so they've generally taken the softer approach and have started to try to rally international support to their cause. But you saw with that statement a couple of weeks ago, they didn't name anybody, including China. They just said in general we're against a hostage diplomacy. Things are obviously coming to a crunch, and at some point some choices are going to have to be made about changing the strategy as we go forward.
Again, as we're recording this on Thursday, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, is meeting with his Chinese counterpart in Alaska. It's been made fairly clear that nothing significant is going to come of that. But I wonder, Chantal, I'll get you to weigh in, whether it indicates at least a dialogue and whether we are putting a lot of faith in the hope that the Biden administration can do something for us here.
I'm no expert, but I believe that the moves this week go to the opposite of that take on what has been happening in Beijing versus that meeting in Alaska. It was clearly scheduled to send a message that no matter what happened at that first high-level U.S. summit under the new administration with China, China wasn't interested in playing on that field and giving ground on that field and having set trial dates. The message clearly is, if you come to Alaska and expect us to make concessions, well, no, we've just set trial dates and we're moving on. This train has left the station.
Althea, did you see anything more hopeful in that than Chantal did?
No, but I'm not sure I read it the same way. I feel like they sent a message prior to the meeting in Anchorage, which is underway, to raise the stakes so that the bargaining chips, like there was more to bargain with. I think the only comfort I think we can have is that it's not impossible for, even once they are tried and a sentence has been given, that the Chinese authorities decide, oh, they finally have found a compromise with the United States, and for health conditions, humanitarian reasons, the two Michaels are being sent home. I think that is the only kind of the glimmer of hope we can hang on to at this point.
It is. I mean, these trials tend to be, even though we won't see it, Andrew, sort of theatrical in some ways, given that they're not based in anything and don't follow the rule of law. So who would they be sending a message to, the Chinese? Is it to us? Is it to the U.S.? Is it to their own people? Like, what are they trying to signal by going forward with this?
Inflexibility, which may or may not be a negotiating tactic. Yes, you're right. I mean, the phrase is show trial. There will be zero actual justice involved. I'm just not sure how much negotiating room the United States has, frankly. Remember, this was not some, wheeze of Donald Trump's. This was the U.S. Justice Department. It was an investigation going back years. It is, itemized and specific. And I don't think I'm not sure how much leeway the United States really has to negotiate on, a criminal investigation, but we'll see.
But there were those reports that there was something on offer, and Meng Wanzhou didn't accept it. Certainly, when I talked to Blinken, he wouldn't even talk about that because that was in the Department of Justice's hands. So maybe it's the wrong person dealing with this. But I don't know. Is there no hope that would be the play from the U.S. administration, or is that too dangerous for them to do that, Chantal?
That would be an interesting start to Biden's term in office, that on his first summit he caves or on behalf of his own Justice Department. Yeah, I don't think that's in the picture.
Althea?
Well, it's not unprecedented for deals to be struck by the Justice Department on cases exactly like this one, very similar to this one. I think the question is what else gets lumped into it? The China-U.S. relationship has a lot of problems. There is way more issues, unfortunately, than these two Michaels. And this is just a tiny, tiny little part. Obviously, it matters a lot to us. And it seemed to matter to President Biden, having, spoken the way he did about human lives being held hostage like this. But I I think the big question is what else gets lumped in U.S.-China negotiations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, everyone, that's a difficult topic. Appreciate your perspective on it. Thank you all very much.